coat lusterless in proportion as his companion became blear-eyed and ragged. In running, his usual arrow-like directness began to deviate, and it was not unusual to meet the pair together zigzagging up the hill. Indeed, Uncle Billy's condition could be predetermined by Bones' appearance at times when his temporary master was invisible. "The old man must have an awful jag on today," was casually remarked when an extra fluffiness and imbecility was noticeable in the passing Bones. At first it was believed that he drank also, but when careful investigation proved this hypothesis untenable, he was freely called a "derned time-servin' yaller hypocrite." Not a few advanced the opinion that if Bones did not actually lead Uncle Billy astray, he at least slobbered him over and coddled him until the old man got conceited in his wickedness. This undoubtedly led to a compulsory divorce between them, and Uncle Billy was happily dispatched to a neighboring town and a doctor. Bones seemed to miss him greatly, ran away for 2 days, and was supposed to have visited him, to have been shocked at his convalescence, and to have been cut by Uncle Billy in his reformed character. And he returned to his old active life again, and buried his past with his forgotten Bones. It was said that he was afterward detected in trying to lead an intoxicated tramp into camp after the methods employed by a blind man's dog, but was discovered in time by the, of course, uncorroborated narrator. I should be tempted to leave him thus in his original and picturesque sin, but the same veracity which compelled me to transcribe his faults and iniquities obliges me to describe his ultimate and somewhat monotonous reformation, which came from no fault of his own. It was a joyous day at Rattler's Ridge that was equally the advent of his change of heart and the first stagecoach that had been induced to diverge from the high road and stop regularly at our settlement. Flags were flying from the post office and Polka Saloon, and Bones was flying before the brass band that he detested, when the sweetest girl in the county, Pinky Preston, daughter of the county judge and hopelessly beloved by all Rattler's Ridge, stepped from the coach which she had glorified by occupying as an invited guest. "What makes him run away?" she asked quickly, opening her lovely eyes in a possibly innocent wonder that anything could be found to run away from her. "He don't like the brass band," we explained eagerly. "How funny!" murmured the girl. "Is it as out of tune as all that?" This irresistible witticism alone would have been enough to satisfy us. We did nothing but repeat it to each other all the next day, but we were positively transported when we saw her suddenly gather her dainty skirts in one hand and trip off through the red dust toward Bones, who, with his eyes over his yellow shoulder, had halted in the road and half turned in mingled disgust and rage at the spectacle of the descending trombone. We held our breath as she approached him. Would Bones evade her as he did us at such moments? Or would he save our reputation, and consent, for the moment, to accept her as a new kind of inebriate? She came nearer. He saw her. He began to slowly quiver with excitement, his stump of a tail vibrating with such rapidity that the loss of the missing portion was scarcely noticeable. Suddenly she stopped before him, took his yellow head between her little hands, lifted it, and looked down in his handsome brown eyes with her 2 lovely blue ones. What passed between them in that magnetic glance no one ever knew. She returned with him, said to him casually, "We're not afraid of brass bands, are we?" To which he apparently acquiesced, at least stifling his disgust of them while he was near her, which was nearly all the time. During the speech-making her gloved hand and his yellow head were always near together, and at the crowning ceremony, her public checking of Yuba Bill's way bill on behalf of the township, with a gold pencil presented to her by the stage company, Bones' joy, far from knowing no bounds, seemed to know nothing but them, and he witnessed it apparently in the air. No one dared to interfere. For the first time a local pride in Bones sprang up in our hearts, and we lied to each other in his praises openly and shamelessly. Then the time came for parting. We were standing by the door of the coach, hats in hand, as Miss Pinky was about to step into it. Bones was waiting by her side, confidently looking into the interior, and apparently selecting his own seat on the lap of Judge Preston in the corner, when Miss Pinky held up the sweetest of admonitory fingers. Then, taking his head between her two hands, she again looked into his brimming eyes and said simply, "Good dog," with the gentlest of emphasis on the adjective, and popped into the coach. The 6 bay horses started as one. The gorgeous green and gold vehicle bounded forward, the red dust rose behind, and the yellow dog danced in and out of it to the very outskirts of the settlement, and then he soberly returned. A day or two later he was missed, but the fact was afterward known that he was at Spring Valley, the county town where Miss Preston lived, and he was forgiven. A week afterward he was missed again, but this time for a longer period, and then a pathetic letter arrived from Sacramento for the storekeeper's wife. "Would you mind," wrote Miss Pinky Preston, "asking some of your boys to come over here to Sacramento and bring back Bones? I don't mind having the dear dog walk out with me at Spring Valley, where everyone knows me, but here he does make one so noticeable on account of his color. I've got scarcely a frock that he agrees with. He don't go with my pink muslin, and that lovely buff tint he makes 3 shades lighter. You know yellow is so tryin'." A consultation was quickly held by the whole settlement, and a deputation sent to Sacramento to relieve the unfortunate girl. We were all quite indignant with Bones, but oddly enough, I think it was greatly tempered with our new pride in him. While he was with us alone, his peculiarities had been scarcely appreciated, but the recurrent phrase, "that yellow dog that they keep at the Rattlers," gave us a mysterious importance along the countryside, as if we had secured a mascot in some zoological curiosity. This was further indicated by a singular occurrence. A new church had been built at the crossroads, and an eminent divine had come from San Francisco to preach the opening sermon. After a careful examination of the camp's wardrobe, and some felicitous exchange of apparel, a few of us were deputed to represent Rattlers at the Sunday service. In our white ducks, straw hats, and flannel blouses, we were sufficiently picturesque and distinctive as honest miners to be shown off in one of the front pews. Seated near the prettiest girls who offered us their hymn books, in the cleanly odor of fresh pine shavings and iron muslin, and blown over by the spices of our own woods through the open windows, a deep sense of the abiding peace of Christian communion settled upon us. At this supreme moment someone murmured in an awe-stricken whisper, "Will you look at Bones?" We looked. Bones had entered the church and gone up in the gallery through a pardonable ignorance and modesty, but, perceiving his mistake, was now calmly walking along the gallery rail before the astounded worshippers. Reaching the end, he paused for a moment and carelessly looked down. It was about 15 feet to the floor below, the simplest jump in the world for the mountain-bred Bones. Daintily, gingerly, lazily, and yet with a conceited airiness of manner, as if, humanly speaking, he had one leg in his pocket and were doing it on 3, he cleared the distance, dropping just in front of the chancel without a sound, turned himself around 3 times, and then lay comfortably down. 3 deacons were instantly in the aisle, coming up before the eminent divine, who, we fancied, wore a restrained smile. We heard the hurried whispers, "Belongs to them," "Quite a local institution here, you know," "Don't like to offend sensibilities," and the minister's prompt "By no means," as he went on with his service. A short month ago we would have repudiated Bones. Today we sat there in slightly supercilious attitudes, as if to indicate that any affront offered to Bones would be an insult to ourselves, and followed by our instantaneous withdrawal in a body. All went well, however, until the minister, lifting the large Bible from the communion table and holding it in both hands before him, walked toward a reading stand by the altar rails. Bones uttered a distinct growl. The minister stopped. We, and we alone, comprehended in a flash the whole situation. The Bible was nearly the size and shape of one of those soft clods of sod which we were in the playful habit of launching at Bones when he lay half asleep in the sun, in order to see him cleverly evade it. We held our breath. What was to be done? But the opportunity belonged to our leader, Jeff Briggs, a confoundedly good-looking fellow, with the golden mustache of a northern Viking and the curls of an Apollo. Secure